I stared at the gleaming red Ferrari in our driveway, my heart pounding as my husband Marcus grinned beside me like a kid on Christmas morning. "Happy anniversary, baby," he said, keys dangling from his finger. $200,000 of pure beauty. What he didn't know was that I'd been tracking every penny head stolen from my trust fund for months. What he didn't know was that I'd hired a private investigator. What he didn't know was that tonight, his perfect little world was about to crumble into nothing. 3 months earlier, my life looked perfect from the outside. I'm Giselle, 29 years old, and I'd built a successful marketing career in Denver. While managing a substantial trust fund, my grandmother left me when I turned 28. The fund contained just over $400,000, money that had been carefully invested and grown over the years. I felt incredibly blessed to have that security, especially knowing how hard my grandmother had worked as a seamstress to build that legacy for our family. Marcus swept into my life like a whirlwind at a charity gala 2 years ago. Tall, charismatic, with dark hair and the kind of confident smile that made every woman in the room turn to look. He was a real estate developer, he told me, building luxury condominiums and flipping houses throughout the Denver metro area. His passion for his work was infectious, and the way he spoke about creating beautiful homes for families made my heart flutter. Our courtship was straight out of a fairy tale. Weekend trips to Aspen, candlelit dinners overlooking the Rocky Mountains, long walks through Washington Park, where he'd tell me about his dreams of expanding his business nationwide. He proposed after 18 months with a stunning 2-carat diamond ring, and we married in a beautiful ceremony at the Denver Botanic Gardens 8 months later. Our home in the suburbs of Littleton felt like a sanctuary. Marcus had designed and built it himself, he told me, as a testament to his skills as a developer. The open floor plan, vaulted ceilings, and floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the stunning mountain views. We hosted dinner parties where Marcus would charm our guests with stories of his latest projects, and I felt proud to be his wife, supporting his ambitions. But supporting his ambitions meant more than just emotional encouragement. 6 months after our wedding, Marcus approached me about his business facing some temporary cash flow problems. Nothing serious, he assured me, just the natural ups and downs of real estate development. A few clients had delayed payments, and he needed bridge financing to keep his projects moving forward. "I hate to ask, sweetheart," he said one evening as we sat on our back deck watching the sunset, "but could you help me with a short-term loan? Maybe $30,000 from your trust fund? I'll pay it back with interest within 60 days, guaranteed." The request made me nervous, but Marcus had never given me reason to doubt him. He showed me contracts, explained the projects, walked me through the financials. Everything seemed legitimate, and the love in his eyes when he thanked me made me feel like we were truly building something together. That 30,000 became 50,000, then 80,000. Each time, Marcus had compelling reasons. A permit delay here, a supplier demanding payment up front there. He always showed me the paperwork, always promised quick repayment, always made me feel like I was investing in our future together. But as winter turned to spring, I started noticing things that didn't quite add up. Our joint checking account, which should have been flush with Marcus' project profits, always seemed to run low. When I asked about it, Head explained that most of his money was tied up in investments and ongoing projects. He needed to maintain liquid capital for opportunities, he said. I wanted to believe him. I loved him desperately, and the thought that this incredible man had chosen me still felt like a miracle. But late at night, when Marcus was working late again or traveling to meet investors, doubts crept in. Why were we always short on household money if his business was so successful? Why did he seem secretive about his phone calls? Why did he insist on handling all our finances when I had years of experience managing my own investments? The first real warning sign came when I noticed Marcus had started keeping his phone face down during dinner and taking calls in his office with the door closed. When I asked about it, he explained that he was working on a major deal that required confidentiality. The investors were paranoid about information leaks, he said, so he had to be extra careful about his communications. Then I found the first unexplained charge on our credit card statement. A jewelry store purchase for $2,000 on a day when Marcus claimed to be in meetings all afternoon. When I asked him about it, he seemed flustered for just a moment before explaining that Head bought me a surprise gift but wanted to save it for the right occasion. You're always so stressed about work, he said, pulling me into his arms. I wanted to get you something special to show you how much I appreciate everything you do for us. I waited weeks for that gift. It never came. More charges appeared. Expensive dinners at restaurants we'd never been to together. A hotel suite rental for an entire weekend when Marcus claimed to be visiting his sick mother in Portland. A spa package for two when Marcus had supposedly been in business meetings in Colorado Springs. Each time I asked, he had explanations. Client entertainment expenses. Business dinners that got charged to the wrong card. Booking errors he'd forgotten to correct. His answers always sounded plausible, but the pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. The breaking point came when I decided to look through Marcus' briefcase for our tax documents. Had been handling our returns, claiming his accountant needed to coordinate our personal filings with his business taxes. But April was approaching fast, and I wanted to review everything before signing. Hidden beneath client contracts and property listings, I found a second credit card statement. One I'd never seen before, in Marcus' name alone, with a billing address I didn't recognize. The charges made my blood run cold. Tiffany and Company, $1,500. The same jewelry store charge from our joint account, but on the same day, just 3 hours apart. Had bought 2 pieces of expensive jewelry on the same day. A romantic restaurant in downtown Denver, $300, on a night when Marcus told me he was working late at the office. The charge was for 2 dinners and a bottle of wine that cost more than most people spend on groceries in a week. The Ritz, Carlton downtown, $800 for a weekend suite. During the same weekend, Marcus claimed to be visiting his mother. But the most devastating part was the recurring monthly charge. Marcus had been renting this suite every month for the past 6 months. My hands shook as I photographed every page of that statement. The evidence was undeniable. My husband was living a double life, and I was paying for it. I couldn't eat for 3 days after finding that credit card statement. Sleep became impossible as my mind raced through every lie, every explanation, every moment when I'd chosen to trust Marcus despite my instincts screaming that something was wrong. The man I'd married, the man I'd shared my bed and my dreams with, had been systematically deceiving me while I funded his betrayal. But confronting him directly felt dangerous. If Marcus was capable of this level of deception, what else might he be hiding? I decided to investigate quietly, carefully, building a complete picture before making any moves. I started by accessing our financial accounts online, something I'd foolishly allowed Marcus to handle completely after our wedding. What I discovered made the secret credit card seem like a minor indiscretion. Over the past 18 months, Marcus had been making systematic transfers from my trust fund to accounts I'd never heard of. Not the business loans he'd asked for, but additional transfers. 20,000 here, 15,000 there. Small enough amounts that they wouldn't trigger any automatic alerts from my financial advisor, but large enough that they added up to a devastating total. $87,000. That's how much had disappeared from accounts that Marcus had convinced me to give him access to for emergency purposes. Money that was supposed to be our safety net, our future children's college funds, our retirement security. I needed help, but I couldn't trust anyone in our social circle. Marcus had charmed all our friends, and I wasn't sure who might inadvertently warn him if they knew I was investigating. So I reached out to my best friend Sarah, a divorce attorney in Chicago who'd known me since college. Just hypothetically, I said during our lunch call, trying to keep my voice steady, what would someone do if they suspected their spouse of financial infidelity? Sarah's tone immediately became professional. Hypothetically, that person should document everything, avoid confrontation until they have a complete picture, and consult with both a divorce attorney and a financial crimes investigator. Financial abuse is serious, Giselle. It's often a precursor to other forms of control and manipulation. The word abuse hit me like a physical blow. I'd never thought of Marcus' behavior in those terms, but Sarah was right. Had isolated me from my own finances, made me dependent on his explanations and decisions, and violated my trust to fund whatever he was doing behind my back. As I started paying closer attention to Marcus' behavior, the lies became more obvious. Had received text messages during dinner and claimed they were from his business partner, but I could see the contact name said A with a heart emoji. Had shower and change clothes after client meetings, something Had never done before. He started working late 3 or 4 nights a week. always with elaborate explanations about difficult clients or complex negotiations. The most painful part was how affectionate he'd become. Suddenly, Marcus was bringing me flowers, cooking romantic dinners, planning surprise weekend getaways. At first, I thought maybe he was trying to reconnect with me, but I soon realized the pattern. Every romantic gesture coincided with another request for money or another large transfer from our accounts. It was psychological manipulation at its finest. Make me feel loved and special, then ask for access to more funds for his struggling business. The romance was just another tool in his arsenal of deception. I decided to test my theory. During one of his romantic dinners, when Marcus was being particularly charming and attentive, I casually mentioned that my financial advisor had recommended moving some investments around. Actually, I said, watching his face carefully, he thinks I should open a separate high-yield savings account for some of my trust fund money. Better interest rates, you know. The flash of panic in Marcus' eyes was brief, but I caught it. That sounds complicated, sweetheart, he said quickly. Why don't we keep everything simple for now? My accountant says it's better for tax purposes if we maintain our current structure. It was a lie, and we both knew it. Marcus was afraid of losing access to my money. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. While Marcus was in the shower, I went through his jacket pockets, something I'd never done in our entire relationship. I felt like I was betraying our marriage, but then I reminded myself that Marcus had been betraying our marriage for months. In the inner pocket of his sports coat, I found a photo. It was obviously a personal photo, not a business one, and it made my heart stop. Marcus was kissing a beautiful blonde woman next to what looked like an expensive sports car in some kind of showroom. They both looked radiantly happy, like a couple celebrating something wonderful. The date stamp on the photo was from 2 days ago. I stared at that image until my eyes burned. This wasn't just financial fraud. My husband was having an affair, and he was funding it with my money. Every romantic gesture, every loving word, every moment of intimacy Wed shared had been a lie while he was building a life with someone else. The woman in the photo was young, probably in her early 20s, with the kind of effortless beauty that comes from expensive salons and designer clothes. She was everything I wasn't. Where I was serious and career-focused, she looked carefree and glamorous. Where I was responsible with money, she clearly enjoyed spending it. I photographed the picture with my phone and put it back exactly where ID found it. Marcus never needed to know that Id discovered his secret, not yet. I was going to need much more evidence before I made any moves, and I was going to need professional help. The next morning, I called Sarah back. It's not hypothetical. I told her, I need the name of a good private investigator. Sarah gave me the contact information for Jake Morrison, a former Denver police detective who started his own private investigation firm after retiring from the force. His office was in a nondescript building downtown, the kind of place you'd walk past without noticing. Perfect for what I needed. Jake was nothing like the private investigators you see in movies. He was in his 50s, with graying hair and a calm, professional demeanor that put me at ease immediately. He listened to my story without judgment, taking notes and asking practical questions about timelines and evidence. The first thing we need to do, Jake said after I'd shown him the photo and the financial records I'd compiled, is identify this woman. Once we know who she is, we can start building a timeline of their relationship and documenting the financial fraud. It took Jake less than 24 hours to identify her. Amanda Hartwell, 26 years old, an Instagram influencer with over 50,000 followers who specialized in lifestyle content. Fashion, travel, luxury experiences, all presented with the kind of polished perfection that made her look like she was living in a magazine. But what made me sick was scrolling through her recent posts. Over the past 6 months, Amanda had been flaunting a lifestyle that looked expensive even by influencer standards. Designer handbags, jewelry that looked suspiciously similar to pieces I'd seen charged to Marcus' secret credit card, weekend trips to luxury resorts, spa days, and shopping sprees. The timeline matched perfectly with the money that had been disappearing from my accounts. Jake had also discovered that Amanda wasn't just Marcus' mistress. According to public records, she was listed as a business partner in several of his recent real estate ventures, companies I'd never heard of, despite funding Marcus' business for over a year. This is more sophisticated than a simple affair, Jake explained during our second meeting. Your husband has been using your money to establish what appears to be a parallel life with this woman. The business partnerships suggest they may be planning something long-term. The evidence Jake compiled over the next 2 weeks painted a picture that was even worse than I'd imagined. Marcus and Amanda had been together for at least 8 months, based on the earliest photos Jake found on her social media accounts. But she'd been careful to crop Marcus out of most photos, only showing expensive gifts, luxury locations, and lifestyle details. The financial investigation was equally devastating. Jake had connections with a forensic accountant who specialized in marital fraud cases. Together, they traced the missing money to a complex web of accounts and business entities that Marcus had been creating using my trust fund as collateral. He hadn't just been stealing money for an affair. Had been building an entire financial empire with my assets while keeping me in the dark about his real business activities. The most heartbreaking discovery came when Jake showed me Amanda's Instagram posts from the past month. She'd been posting photos of house, hunting, looking at luxury condominiums in Denver's most exclusive neighborhoods. The captions talked about exciting new chapters and dreams coming true. Marcus was planning a future with her, funded entirely by money he'd stolen from me. There's something else, Jake said during our third meeting, his expression grave. I've been monitoring their communications, and it appears they're planning something significant. Amanda posted a story yesterday about being excited for a special surprise this week. Based on the timing and some financial activity I've tracked, I think your husband is about to make a major purchase. That's when everything clicked into place. Our anniversary was coming up, and Marcus had been acting unusually excited about it. Had been planning something special, he said, something that would show me how much he loved me. But now I knew the truth. Whatever surprise Marcus had planned for our anniversary was really meant for Amanda. He was going to use the occasion to celebrate with me while secretly planning to share his real celebration with her. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. The man I'd married, the man I'd trusted with my heart and my future, had been planning to destroy me financially while building a new life with someone else. And the cruelest part was that he expected me to smile and be grateful while he did it. Jake helped me understand the legal implications of what Marcus was doing. The financial fraud was serious enough for criminal charges, and the business entities he'd created using my money could be considered theft under Colorado law. But prosecuting would require extensive documentation and careful timing. The best thing you can do right now, Jake advised, is to let him make whatever move he's planning for your anniversary. Document everything, record what you can, and don't let on that you know anything. Once he commits to whatever major fraud he's planning, well, have enough evidence to involve law enforcement. It was the hardest advice I'd ever had to follow. Pretending that everything was normal while my husband planned to betray me with money he'd stolen from me felt like torture. But I knew Jake was right. Marcus had been careful and methodical in his deception. I needed to be just as careful and methodical in building the case against him. The night before our anniversary, I lay in bed next to Marcus, listening to him sleep, knowing that in less than 24 hours, his entire world would begin to collapse. He'd built his new life on a foundation of lies and theft, and I was going to make sure that foundation crumbled beneath him. But first, I had to survive whatever performance he had planned for our anniversary, knowing that every word of love he spoke would be a lie designed to cover his betrayal. Our anniversary morning started with Marcus bringing me breakfast in bed, something he hadn't done since our honeymoon. Fresh strawberries, French toast made from scratch, and freshly ground coffee served on our wedding china. He was practically glowing with excitement, like a man about to give his wife the gift of a lifetime. If I hadn't known the truth, I would have been touched by the gesture. Instead, I felt sick watching him perform the role of loving husband while knowing that every sweet word was designed to manipulate me. "Happy anniversary. Beautiful," he said, kissing my forehead as he set the tray across my lap. 2 years of the most incredible happiness I've ever known. I managed to smile and thank him, even though the words felt like acid in my throat. Marcus was in such a good mood that he couldn't stop talking about how much he loved me, how lucky he felt to have me, how excited he was about our future together. "I have something very special planned for tonight," he said, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. "Something that's going to show you just how much you mean to me." The irony was unbearable. The gift he was so excited to give me had been purchased with my own money and was actually intended for another woman. But I played my part perfectly, expressing excitement and gratitude while my heart broke a little more with each lie he told. Throughout the day, Marcus was more attentive than had been in months. He suggested we spend the afternoon together, taking a walk through the neighborhood and stopping at our favorite coffee shop. He held my hand, pointed out houses he thought were beautiful, and talked about the possibility of us designing our dream home together someday. All of it was a performance, and he was giving the show of his life. "You know what I love most about you, Giselle," he said as we sat on a bench overlooking the small lake near our house. "You believe in me. You support my dreams even when things get tough. Not every woman would be so understanding about the financial pressures of running a business." I wanted to scream. Marcus was actually thanking me for being understanding about him stealing from me. The manipulation was so sophisticated, so carefully crafted, that I almost felt admiration for his skill even as I hated him for using it against me. As evening approached, Marcus' excitement became almost childlike. He insisted I dress up for our anniversary dinner, suggesting I wear the emerald green dress Head bought me for my birthday. At the time, Id thought it was a romantic gesture. Now I wondered if Head bought an identical dress for Amanda. "I want you to look absolutely stunning tonight," he said, watching me get ready with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "This is going to be a night we remember for the rest of our lives." He was right about that, though not for the reasons he imagined. Dinner was at Romano's, the Italian restaurant where Wed had our first date. Marcus had requested our original table, and had arranged for the same wine Wed shared that first night. Every detail was perfect, every gesture romantic, every word designed to make me feel loved and cherished. "To my incredible wife," he said, raising his glass in a toast. "To the woman who makes everything in my life possible, I love you more than words can express." The toast nearly broke me. Not because I believed it, but because I remembered when I would have. There had been a time when Marcus' words could make my heart race with joy. Now they just reminded me of how completely Head fooled me. Halfway through dinner, Marcus' phone rang. He looked at the screen and frowned apologetically. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. This is the client I've been working with on that big commercial development. I know I promised no work tonight, but this deal could change everything for us. Give me just 2 minutes." I nodded understanding, but as soon as he stepped outside to take the call, I followed him. Jake had given me a small recording device that looked like a regular phone case, and I wasn't going to miss this opportunity. Standing just inside the restaurant's entryway, I could hear Marcus' conversation clearly. "Baby, everything's going perfectly," he was saying, his voice completely different from the tone Head used with me all day. "The car will be ready for pickup tomorrow morning. I know you've been patient, and I promise it'll be worth the wait." There was a pause as Amanda apparently responded. "Of course it's the red one you wanted. Ferrari California T, just like we discussed. $200,000 of pure beauty, and it's all yours." My hands were shaking as I held the recording device, capturing every word. "I'm with Giselle right now, doing the anniversary thing, but tomorrow morning we can take your new car for a drive up to Vail. I've already booked the suite at the Four Seasons." Another pause. "I love you too, Amanda. Just a few more months and we won't have to sneak around anymore. Once I get access to her investment portfolio, we'll have enough to start fresh somewhere new. Maybe California, like you've always wanted." I felt like I was drowning. Marcus wasn't just having an affair and stealing my money. He was planning to destroy me financially and then disappear with Amanda to start a new life. The investment portfolio he mentioned was my grandmother's life insurance money, over $200,000 that had been protecting as our emergency fund. When Marcus came back to the table, he was all apologies and romantic attention again. "Sorry about that interruption, sweetheart. But great news. That deal I've been working on just got approved. Which means tonight's surprise is going to be even more special." I somehow managed to finish dinner, playing the role of the grateful wife while my world collapsed around me. Marcus paid with our joint credit card, the same account where Head been hiding charges for Amanda, and then drove us home with barely contained excitement. "Close your eyes," he said as we pulled into our driveway. "I want this to be perfect." I closed my eyes and let him guide me out of the car, knowing that whatever he was about to show me represented the complete destruction of our marriage. When he told me to open my eyes, I was staring at a gleaming red Ferrari parked in our driveway. exactly as Eid seen in my vision that morning. Happy anniversary, baby, Marcus said, dangling the keys like a prize. $200,000 of pure beauty. What do you think? I think you're a lying, cheating thief who just used my money to buy a car for your mistress, I thought. But what I said was, oh my goodness, Marcus. It's absolutely beautiful. And then I gave the performance of my life, exclaiming over the car's features, thanking him for such an incredible gift, and expressing amazement at his success, all while knowing that in just a few hours, his world was going to collapse. That's great, I said. Just like Id planned. It's absolutely perfect. Later that night, after Marcus fell asleep next to me, I quietly got up and made 3 phone calls. One to Jake Morrison, one to the FBI Financial Crimes Unit, and one to Sarah. It's time, I told each of them. I have everything we need. Marcus' world was about to collapse, and I was going to watch it happen. I met with Jake Morrison at 6 in the morning at a coffee shop across town, while Marcus was still sleeping off what he thought had been a perfect anniversary celebration. Jake had brought David Chen, the forensic accountant who'd been tracking Marcus' financial crimes, and Agent Patricia Reynolds from the FBI's white-collar crime division. The recording you obtained last night gives us everything we need for federal charges, Agent Reynolds said after listening to Marcus' conversation with Amanda. Wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit financial fraud. We're looking at serious federal crimes here. David spread out a comprehensive analysis of Marcus' activities over the past 18 months. The scope of his fraud was breathtaking. He hadn't just stolen money from me, had been running a sophisticated scheme involving multiple victims, shell companies, and fraudulent business ventures. Your husband has been using your trust fund and other assets as collateral for loans that he's been defaulting on, David explained. Has created at least 6 different business entities using your financial information and has been moving money between accounts to hide the trail. But the most shocking discovery was that I wasn't Marcus' only victim. Agent Reynolds showed me files on 3 other women, all wealthy, all recently divorced or widowed, all of whom had been targeted by Marcus in similar schemes over the past 5 years. This is his pattern, she explained. He identifies women with significant assets, builds romantic relationships with them, gains access to their finances, and then systematically drains their accounts while planning his exit strategy. I felt sick, realizing that everything about our relationship had been calculated. Marcus hadn't fallen in love with me at that charity gala, had targeted me because someone had done research on the attendees and identified me as a mark. Jake had been working with law enforcement for weeks, building a comprehensive case that would ensure Marcus couldn't escape justice. But they needed me to play along with his plans for just a little longer, to catch him in the act of completing his final fraud. According to our monitoring of his communications, Jake said, Marcus is planning to ask you for access to your investment portfolio tomorrow. Hez told Amanda that this will be their final score before they disappear together. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I would give Marcus access to my investment accounts, exactly as had requested, but every transaction would be monitored and recorded by federal agents. The moment he attempted to transfer my money to accounts under his control, he would be arrested for federal crimes. What about Amanda? I asked. She's been helping him spend my money. We have enough evidence to charge her as a co-conspirator, Agent Reynolds said. Her social media posts alone prove she knew the money was stolen. And we have financial records showing she received direct payments from accounts Marcus fraudulently controlled. I spent the rest of the morning working with the FBI to set up monitoring on all my financial accounts. Every transaction Marcus made would be tracked in real time, and agents would be positioned to arrest him the moment he committed the final act of fraud. The hardest part was going home and pretending that everything was normal. Marcus was awake when I returned, sitting at the kitchen table with coffee and his laptop, probably coordinating with Amanda about picking up the Ferrari. Good morning, beautiful, he said, kissing me as I walked in. I was wondering where you'd gone. Just couldn't sleep, so I went for a drive to clear my head, I said, which was technically true. Last night was so overwhelming. The car, everything you've accomplished. I'm still processing it all. Marcus' smile was radiant. I'm so glad you love it. Actually, I was hoping we could talk about something related to that success. Here it comes, I thought. The Ferrari purchase pretty much cleaned out my liquid assets, Marcus said, his tone becoming serious and business-like, which is fine, because it represents a major milestone in my business growth. But I have an opportunity that could set us up for life, and I need to move quickly. He pulled out a folder of documents that looked legitimate and professional. More props in his elaborate performance. I've been offered a chance to partner with a major development firm on a resort project in Aspen, he said. We're talking about a $200 million development that could net us $20 million in profits over 3 years. The numbers were so absurd that I almost laughed. But Marcus was completely serious. The only catch is that I need to show proof of assets to secure my partnership position. Nothing gets spent. It's just a demonstration of financial capacity. I need access to your investment portfolio for maybe 72 hours, just to prove we have the liquidity they require. It was the exact same request Agent Reynolds had predicted. Marcus was asking for access to my grandmother's life insurance money, the last major asset he hadn't already stolen from. How much access do you need? I asked, playing the role of concerned but supportive wife. Just temporary authorization to move the funds into a joint development account, Marcus said smoothly. $230,000. It shows right back up in our accounts within a week, plus our share of the initial development profits. I pretended to consider his proposal, asking the kinds of questions a loving wife would ask. How secure was the investment? What were the risks? Could we afford to wait a week to access that money if we had an emergency? Marcus had answers for everything, complete with documentation that looked official and convincing. If I hadn't known he was lying, I might have been persuaded by the presentation. Okay, I said finally. If this could really secure our financial future, then I trust your judgment. You've never steered us wrong before. The look of triumph that flashed across Marcus' face was quickly hidden behind an expression of gratitude and love. You're incredible, Giselle. This is going to change everything for us. He was right about that, just not in the way he imagined. I called my investment firm and authorized Marcus to make transfers from my portfolio, exactly as Head requested. What Marcus didn't know was that Agent Reynolds was listening to every call, and federal agents were already positioned to track every penny he moved. The transfers should be available tomorrow morning, I told Marcus after hanging up with my financial advisor. Perfect, Marcus said, pulling me into his arms. By this time next week, we're going to be millionaires several times over. That night, I lay in bed next to my husband for what I knew would be the last time, listening to him sleep and thinking about how completely Head destroyed our marriage with his greed and deception. In less than 24 hours, Marcus would make the move that would send him to federal prison. But the thing that hurt most wasn't the money Head stolen or even the affair with Amanda. It was the realization that the man Id loved had never existed at all. Marcus had been playing a character for 2 years, and Id been foolish enough to believe the performance was real. Tomorrow, the curtain would come down on his final show. Marcus left the house early the next morning, claiming he had meetings with the development partners before making the investment transfers. What he actually planned to do was pick up Amanda and take her to collect the Ferrari, then spend the day celebrating their success before executing his final theft. I knew this because Agent Reynolds had been monitoring their communications all night. Every text message, every phone call, every detail of their plans was being recorded as evidence. At 9:15, my phone rang. It was Marcus, and his voice was tight with panic. Giselle, something's wrong with our accounts, he said, and I could hear Amanda's voice in the background asking what was happening. I'm getting error messages when I try to access the investment portfolio, and our joint checking account appears to be frozen. I feigned confusion and concern. Frozen? What do you mean frozen? I mean, I can't access any of our money, Marcus said, his voice rising. The bank is saying there's some kind of fraud investigation, but that doesn't make any sense. In the background, I could hear Amanda becoming increasingly agitated. Her voice was shrill as she demanded to know what Marcus was going to do about their plans. Where are you right now? I asked, already knowing the answer. I'm at the Ferrari dealership with my business partner. We were supposed to finalize some paperwork, but now everything's falling apart. His business partner. Even in his panic, Marcus couldn't bring himself to admit the truth. I'm coming home right now, Marcus said. We need to call the bank and sort this out immediately. But when Marcus arrived home 30 minutes later, there was a sheriff's deputy waiting in our driveway, along with Agent Reynolds and 2 other federal agents. I watched from our front window as Marcus' face went completely white. He sat in his car for a long moment, probably trying to process what was happening, before slowly getting out and walking toward the front door. Amanda wasn't with him. According to Agent Reynolds, Shed panicked when the dealership called to say there was a problem with the car payment, and Shed fled the scene. Mrs. Johnson, Agent Reynolds said as Marcus walked up to our door, "We have a federal warrant for your husband's arrest." Marcus looked at me like I might have some explanation for what was happening. His confusion appeared genuine, which almost made me feel sorry for him. Almost. "There must be some mistake," Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I don't understand what this is about." Agent Reynolds read Marcus his rights while I stood in our doorway, holding an envelope containing copies of all the evidence Wed compiled over the past month: financial records, photographs, recorded conversations, witness statements from the other women Head defrauded. Everything that would destroy his life, just as Head tried to destroy mine. "Marcus Andrew Johnson, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit financial fraud, and violation of federal banking regulations," Agent Reynolds said as she handcuffed him. That's when Marcus finally looked at me with recognition. Not confusion, not panic, but the cold understanding that I knew everything. "How long have you known?" he asked quietly. "Long enough," I said, handing him the envelope. "Long enough to protect myself and gather evidence of every crime you've committed." Marcus' face crumpled as the full scope of his situation became clear. The federal charges were serious enough to put him away for decades, and every asset Head accumulated through fraud would be seized to pay restitution to his victims. But the final blow came when Agent Reynolds informed him that Amanda had already been arrested at her apartment. "Your partner in this scheme has provided a full confession in exchange for a reduced sentence," Agent Reynolds said. "She's documented her role in your fraud activities and provided evidence of additional crimes we weren't aware of." The look of betrayal on Marcus' face would have been amusing if the situation weren't so devastating. The woman He'd been planning to start a new life with had thrown him under the bus the moment things went wrong. "She gave us everything," Agent Reynolds continued. "Text messages, financial records, details about your plans to flee to California. She even provided evidence about your previous victims that we hadn't discovered yet." Marcus sagged against the police car as the reality of his situation sank in. He'd lost Amanda, had lost his freedom, had lost all the money He'd stolen, and he was facing federal prison time. Everything He'd worked for had collapsed in a single morning. As they loaded him into the police car, Marcus looked at me one last time. "I did love you," he said. "At the beginning, I really did love you." "No, you didn't," I replied. "You loved my money. You never even knew who I was." After the police cars drove away, I sat in my living room surrounded by federal agents and legal documents, trying to process the fact that my marriage was over and my husband was going to prison. But instead of feeling sad or heartbroken, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: relief. For the first time in over a year, I felt completely free. 6 months later, I stood in a federal courthouse in Denver watching Marcus being sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. The judge had been particularly harsh in her sentencing, noting that Marcus had shown a pattern of predatory behavior targeting vulnerable women and that his crimes had caused significant financial and emotional damage to multiple victims. Amanda received 3 years in federal prison after her cooperation with prosecutors. Her social media empire had collapsed overnight when news of the fraud scheme became public, and her followers had turned on her with a vengeance that was almost as satisfying as Marcus' conviction. The Ferrari that had started this whole revelation was sold at a federal asset forfeiture auction, along with all the other property Marcus had purchased with stolen money. I received full restitution for my losses, plus additional damages that put my financial situation in a better position than it had been before I met Marcus. But the money wasn't what mattered most to me. What mattered was the justice, and the knowledge that Marcus could never hurt another woman the way He'd hurt me and his other victims. The 3 other women Marcus had defrauded became unexpected allies in my healing process. We formed a support group of sorts, helping each other process the betrayal and manipulation Wed all experienced. Their stories were remarkably similar to mine: charming man, whirlwind romance, systematic financial fraud, and plans to disappear with the money. I learned that I was actually Marcus' most successful victim, which was why Head stayed with me longer than the others. My trust fund and stable income had provided him with more opportunities for fraud than Head had with previous targets. The investigation also revealed that Marcus had been planning to fake his own death in a car accident after stealing my investment portfolio. He and Amanda had researched how to assume new identities and start fresh in a country without extradition treaties. If I hadn't discovered the truth when I did, I would have lost everything and been left believing my husband had died tragically. Working with Jake Morrison throughout the investigation and trial had been one of the few positive aspects of the entire experience. He was professional, compassionate, and completely trustworthy at a time when I'd lost faith in my ability to judge people's character. 6 months after Marcus' sentencing, Jake asked me to dinner. Not as a client consultation, but as a date. "I know the timing might seem strange," he said, "and I understand if you're not ready for anything romantic after everything you've been through. But I'd really like to get to know you better, outside of a professional context." I was nervous about dating again, but Jake had seen me at my absolute worst and had never judged me for being fooled by Marcus' manipulation. He understood the trauma I'd experienced, and had been part of my journey toward justice and healing. Our relationship developed slowly, built on trust and honesty rather than grand romantic gestures. Jake never asked me about my finances, never pressured me for anything, and never made me feel like I needed to prove my worth through giving or supporting his goals. A year after Marcus' conviction, Jake and I moved in together, not because of financial convenience or romantic manipulation, but because we genuinely enjoyed each other's company and wanted to build something real together. I also used my experience to help other women recognize the signs of financial abuse and fraud. I started speaking at women's shelters, financial planning seminars, and law enforcement training sessions about how sophisticated predators like Marcus operate and how victims can protect themselves. The most important lesson I learned was to trust my instincts. Every red flag I'd ignored, every doubt I'd pushed aside, every moment when something felt wrong had been my subconscious mind trying to protect me from a dangerous situation. I'd been trained to be polite, to be understanding, to give people the benefit of the doubt, but those same qualities had made me an ideal victim. Now I teach women that protecting yourself financially isn't selfish or suspicious, it's smart. Keeping some assets separate, maintaining your own credit, understanding your financial picture, and questioning inconsistencies isn't a sign that you don't trust your partner. It's a sign that you're smart enough to protect yourself. Marcus will be eligible for parole in 6 years, but he'll be in his mid-40s with a federal criminal record and restitution obligations that will follow him for decades. Amanda will be out in 2 years, but her reputation is destroyed and she'll be starting over with nothing. Meanwhile, I'm building a life based on truth, trust, and genuine partnership. Jake and I are talking about marriage, but we're taking our time, building a foundation based on honesty and mutual respect rather than manipulation and financial entanglement. The red Ferrari that had seemed like such a symbol of betrayal is now a reminder of my own strength and intelligence. I trusted my instincts, gathered evidence, sought help when I needed it, and refused to be victimized by someone who saw me as an opportunity rather than a person. Every woman deserves a partner who loves her for who she is, not what she can provide. Every woman deserves financial security and independence, and every woman deserves to trust her instincts when something feels wrong. Marcus thought he was clever, but he underestimated the woman Head chosen to victimize. I may have been trusting, but I was never stupid. And when I finally fought back, I fought with everything I had. The life lesson I learned from this experience is that love should never cost you your security, your independence, or your peace of mind. Real love protects and supports you. Real love doesn't ask you to ignore your instincts or compromise your safety. I hope sharing my story helps other women recognize the signs of financial abuse and trust themselves enough to seek help when they need it. You are stronger than you know, smarter than your abuser believes, and worthy of genuine love and respect. Have you ever had to trust your instincts about someone close to you, even when it was difficult? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe for more real life stories, and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that you always have the power to protect yourself and fight back against those who would take advantage of your trust. Stay strong, trust your instincts, and never let anyone convince you that your financial independence isn't important.